Okay. Hello, YouTube. I'm going to be doing a video today on what the relative value of the chess pieces are in chess. And if you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So, anyways, when we're talking about the relative value of the pieces in chess, it's actually a much harder question to answer than you might think. There is a wide range of theories as to what the chess pieces are worth, even among people that are programming different computer programs. They insert different valuations into the pieces. Some of these valuations go to even the fifth decimal point. It's actually kind of interesting to try to guess at kind of what is the relative value of the pieces. Part of the problem is that the relative value of every piece during the chess game is a moving target. Pieces have different values depending on what square on the board they're on, and they have different values throughout the game. So the base values that most of us learn when we start playing chess is that a pawn is worth 1 point. Knights and bishops are both worth 3 points apiece. The rook is worth 5, and the queen is worth 9. And for the most part, I would say that this gives us a pretty false impression of what the pieces are really worth, but it gets us close enough to the truth that we can play chess and not lose a major amount of material. One thing that's kind of clear is the queen is probably being undervalued at 9 points. Just about any combination of pieces that adds up to 9 typically won't compensate for the loss of a queen. So if you have like a bishop, rook, and pawn, it doesn't seem like that's quite worth a queen, but maybe a bishop, rook, and 2 pawns might be worth a queen depending on where those 2 pawns are located. Also, a queen seems to do just fine against 2 rooks. So it seems like you need a queen and a pawn, against 2 rooks, and that should be the same, but really a queen versus 2 rooks, it comes out alright. So probably the queen is a little undervalued at 9. Probably the queen is closer to 10. And then, of course, the rooks probably have the biggest shift in relative value throughout the game. Probably at the beginning of the game, they're more like a 4-point piece or a 4.5-point piece at most. And then towards the end of the game, when the pawns start getting cleared and the rooks have a lot more scope, whenever the rooks start getting to open files and open lines, the value of the rook is going to increase, and it's going to become more of a 5-point piece. So one of the things that modern computer engines do, most of the really sophisticated ones like the Stockfish 12s and the Ribkas and the Houdinis, is they'll actually use 2 different tables for their piece values. They'll use an opening table, and that'll go through the middle game, and then they'll use an endgame table, and they'll have 2 different sets of values for the pieces based on what phase of the game it is. Also, you need to value your pieces differently based on your piece pairs that are on the board. So, there is a large group of people that will give the bishop a base value of, say, 3.25, and they'll give the knight a similar base value. Usually the knight is valued a little bit less, at least fractionally less than the bishop. It's usually valued at, 3.15, but there's some people that still value it as exactly the same as the bishop at 3.25. It really just depends. And we're talking base values here. These pieces change their value depending on where they're living, kind of, on the chessboard. So there are a large number of people that will value the bishop pair as 7 points or 7.5 points, but they'll value the individual bishop at 3.25. So they're bumping it up an extra half a point. They're giving that extra half a point advantage if you have the bishop and it's paired. But an unpaired bishop is worth less. So a paired bishop might be worth 3.5, and an unpaired bishop is worth 3.25. So they're giving that full half-point advantage for having the bishop pair. And that's something that happens a lot in chess too. Certain piece pairs tend to work well together. Actually, recently it's just kind of been discovered that the knight pair seems to work very well together. It seems like the worst combination of minor pieces is having just 1 bishop and 1 knight. That doesn't seem to work very well. Having 2 knights and a bishop or 2 bishops and a knight seem to be okay, but having just this remaining pair of just 1 bishop and 1 knight, regardless of which bishop and which knight it is, seems to lower the relative value of your pieces. So now I'm going to show you something you've probably never seen before in relation to how you value the pieces. I'm going to show you a table, and this is this is a standard table that programmers will actually use to value pieces. So using the magic of computers, I'm going to bring up this table. So this table gives you the value of the piece based on what square it is. So on this table you have all 64 squares for the king, and it shows its deviation from its regular value. It's valuing that king from like a standard deviation, typically in, you know, tenths of a pawn or something like that, where it's giving this deviation based off of what square it is. So you'll notice that pieces like the queen, which control more squares in the middle of the board, it's showing that this queen has a higher value if it occupies the center. Out of all of these, really the most interesting, deviation value is going to be your knight, which has the widest range of deviations, right? So, like the knight in the corner, it's giving this, 5/10 of a pawn deviation, and then it's giving 2/10 of a pawn deviation in the center. And then another thing that you want to note here is that it doesn't value all of these 16 center squares equally. There's basically 3 sets of center squares. It's got the center square in the corners, and then it's got a second set here. You know, that set of 3, and then it's got the sweet center that it's giving the highest value to. So this is something you want to keep in mind in your own practice when you're looking at these games. Also note the rook on the 7th. The white rook on the 7th rank is being given a higher value. So that's another critical thing. And these are some things that we know from human practice that are being confirmed with computer programming. We know that a pawn, for example, as it goes down the board, increases in value. And you can see this deviation table here. You know, it starts out at base, and then it's actually giving a negative to move the pawn from f2 to f3. You know, mostly to keep computers from making early weakening moves of their king, which is actually kind of a critical idea. And then all of these pawns are pretty much just increasing in value as they shoot up the board, because they're getting closer and closer to, you know, becoming a queen. And of course here it would have a 0 value because it's no longer a pawn, it's something else. So when you play your own games, you have to take this into consideration. So I'm going to make this disappear real quick. You have to think about the relative value of your pieces. If you get your knight to the e5 square, that's going to be more valuable than a knight on f3, and it's certainly going to be more valuable than a knight on g1. And also your rooks don't really hit full value until the end of the game. So what base value should you use for your pieces? So, you know, I've done some research into this just to guess at kind of a base value for the pieces. I would say like a fair base value for the pieces is your pawns are not all the same value. You know, I would say that you would say something like this pawn on the edge here is like 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and then you have full point pawns. So 7, 8, 9, and then 1 full point here in the middle, right? You could also do like 8, 9, 10, and you could say that the center pawns are 1.1. So if you're trying to do like decimal point valuations, that's maybe how you could do it for your pawns, because not all the pawns are of equal value. And then I would say the bishop is worth slightly more than the knight. I would put the bishop at something like, 3.25, and I would put the knight at something like 3.15, and I would have a different value for paired and unpaired bishops. I feel like the 3.5 value for a paired bishop is a little high. I would say maybe like 3.4. Because paired knights also have kind of an increased value, although it's probably not as much as paired bishops. And then I would put the rook at like a base value of about 4.5. Maybe as high as 5 once you hit an endgame. And then I would say the queen is closer to 10. So that would be my base value for the pieces, and I think if you operate with that base value in your regular games, I think that's going to be very helpful. But keep in mind that other considerations are just going to be more important throughout your game and throughout your games. Just having more space in the middle of the board, generally speaking, will make your pieces worth more, because they're going to occupy those squares that you saw on that table that makes your pieces more valuable, and therefore your pieces will have a higher relative value than your opponents. So the main thing is to get your pieces positioned well in a chess game so that they have the highest value they can possibly have throughout the game. Right? So anyways, that is how you should value your pieces in the game of chess, the relative value of your pieces throughout the game. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess. And if you like this video and if you like this kind of content, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Thank you very much for watching.